Hey, this is Haken, and I'm going to provide some commentary for my entry to the Ludum Dare 47 game jam titled Universalis. It is a planetary physics simulator where you create planets and launch them into orbit around stars. The theme for this game jam was stuck in a loop, so I started brainstorming about ways to be stuck in a loop, things that were stuck in a loop, and eventually landed on the idea of planets being in orbits. I really enjoy physics simulations and sandboxes, so this idea resonated with me. I thought it would be pretty quick to implement, so I gave it a go. You hear that there is a low tone to begin with, and as you launch a planet, you'll hear another tone come in. The idea was inspired by Pythagoras' theory of musica universalis, or a harmony of the celestial spheres in orbit. So I thought that based on the sizing and the distance of planets, if you got them locked into certain ratios, you'd get certain harmonies. I played early on with tonalities and frequencies, but it was just so dissonant that I ended up focusing on a preset track list, tracks being applied to planets as you launched them. The end result ended up being a lot better, sonically, anyway. The implementation, what we're seeing now, is actually a post-jam update. There were issues originally with the trajectory calculation not quite being correct, and it was harder for planets to actually achieve stable orbits. I fixed that with more iterations on the simulation of the trajectory, with the near perfect results that you're seeing now. The particle effect when the planets hit each other were pretty fun to get working. A lot of messing with transferring velocities and collisions with physics layers, but I got it working in the end. You'll notice that as a planet gets destroyed, the corresponding track stops playing. For me, that gave weight to the player's skill achieving stable systems. You might even be able to start mixing your own track using the feature. Really, the overall objective isn't really set for the player. It's a sandbox, and it allows the player to create their own environment. Some players rightfully wanted more impact on the music, tones, volume, and I agree that would have been neat. But really, I was overall happy with the end result musically, considering that the song came together in just a couple of hours. When I came back for a post-jam update, I really wanted to get to some of the features I promised in the original game mode selection page. For the objective mode, the game provides players with preset orbits that they have to hit in order to progress in levels. For this, I serialized level data like ellipse parameters in JSON and read them back in at runtime to match the trajectory of the planet the player launched and judge within some percentage whether they were on the mark. This is certainly an idea that you could take a lot further than I did. I didn't implement any kind of level select, and there weren't really that many levels. It was a mini goal, personally, to get this sort of system set up, and I got as far as I wanted with it. Another goal that I never got to but started implementing was music selection. For replaying the game, you might want to listen to different songs as you play through if you get tired of one. I eventually had a music selection panel in the pause menu, which I never end up showing in this playthrough, but I never actually went back and wrote new songs. The level data also contained parameters that I never finished implementing, like the number of planets in any one orbit, and also rotation direction, like I'm showing here. I originally thought the idea could do pretty well on a mobile design, and come to think of it, I actually remember playing something similar to this, but I realized pretty quickly, playtesting, that this implementation wasn't all that interesting or challenging, so I moved on. The idea with this one was that it might be a little hard to get the timing just right, but even if you can hit the trajectories for just a moment, you pass the level. And that was the idea behind the text there at the bottom. This is playing in full screen mode, which I didn't set up my canvases right to scale properly, but that's something that I definitely improved on in future jams. I really do like the music. Really happy with that. So the final game mode is a sandbox, where you can change the physics settings or the number of stars and see how that affects the planets. You can see the trajectory system is really not all that well optimized. It's actually simulating the physics quickly to figure out where the planet would actually move at each step and rendering that to screen. So with an increasing number of stars and iterations for accuracy, the math gets pretty heavy. I added a gravity slider, which affects the planets real time. Just something fun to play with. It ended up being pretty hard to get stable orbits in this system due to the way it's set up, likely even impossible. In reality, these scales are so massive that the influence of other bodies doesn't affect things all that dramatically. I also added a planet gravity checkbox, which was another thing that a lot of players mentioned. It's definitely a cool thing to mess with, but their attraction makes the systems even less stable. There were probably things that I could have done to make this truer to life, count for the mass of the bodies differently, but for first draft, it was definitely something fun to play with. This was a mode that I would have loved to get into the jam entry, but it's just hard to get everything into the 48 or 72 hours. You can see that trajectory simulation really slowed down. So here's the 3-star system. I did want to give the player the opportunity to move stars around themselves, but from the foundation of it, they just were not set up to move. So would have required a lot of refactoring that I wasn't really ready to sign up for. You can see that those planets just can't hit a stable orbit with the interactions of the other bodies, even as distant as they might appear to be. So it would have taken a lot more tuning. But still kind of fun to see what other kind of trajectories you can make up in this system. So this was the first Ludum Dare that I did, and the second game jam that I did. So I was learning a lot about scope management and still learning about Unity. With that comes a lot of trial and error and workflow management. And in the end, you just won't hit all the targets you wanted to begin with. But I think that's, at least for me personally, the nice thing about game jams is you're learning that skill and coming away with, even a partially finished product. So thanks for watching. If you hadn't watched the full playthrough where you can hear all the music without me talking over it, definitely check that out. You'll see the link at the end of the video.